Hi, folks. Welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. It's just been an absolutely lovely day. Little on the warm side, but not bad. Perfectly clear skies. You couldn't hardly ask for much better day, but that's all going to change. There's already flood warnings out for tomorrow, for this weekend, tomorrow and Sunday. So if you find yourself living in the area that I live in, definitely be aware of that. Or it's not just going to be here, throughout probably the Midwest. So things will be changing by tomorrow. Things are changing all over the place. And I know this is not something that most of you want to talk about. I know that many of you are tired of it. I'm tired of it. I'm at the point of like, just get it over with. Rip the Band-Aid off and let it happen, or stop. And I'm speaking of World War III. I know that there's some of you that also think that it's just not going to happen. You think it's all just, it's all just a game that's being played. And you could be right. It may not happen. But I think we're starting to get beyond the point of this just being a show. I think we're getting into the times that it's looking pretty real. I mentioned, I think it was this morning, that Russia is moving some of their ships, their battleships, their warships, in near United States waters down the Caribbean. There'll be a submarine and several of their ships docked in Cuba. Yep, in Cuba. So it sounds like the Cuban Missile Crisis, just all over again, maybe even worse this time. And then, of course, there's the horrible performance of Joe Biden at the Normandy invasion D-Day anniversary celebrations over in France. And I know that well, it's been this way for a long time. Sure it has. I mean, it's been this way from day one, but it's getting worse. I don't really pay a whole lot of attention to it, but from my perspective, what I saw happen and how he performed and how feeble he looked and how disoriented he looked, and who knows whether he had an accident in his Depends or not, it looked worse than we've seen so far. So it looks weak, right? He looks weak. And I think that's for a purpose also. I've said that many times. I think that they want America, they want him to look weak. Because they want America to look weak. Germany announced today that they have reinstated the draft. This is the first time since the Cold War that they've done this. They've reinstated the draft, and they've issued plans for forced evacuations, mandates of people getting into shelters, bunkers, things like that, and of rationing of foods. And they have put out a call for their citizens to start stocking up. And they're openly saying that this is World War III preparations that they're getting ready for. I think a lot of this is also tied. Well, it's all tied together. I've said that before. It's all like a big puzzle. And each one of these things are little, these little points of, are little puzzle pieces. But it's all part of the same thing. Bloomberg had an article, I believe it was yesterday, and Bloomberg isn't like some pro-conservative type of organization. They're mainstream news, focused mostly on financial news, and it was talking about how the world is kind of moving away from the U.S. dollar, and how BRICS is getting ready to unveil their new currency. They announced yesterday or today that they are absolutely, definitely working on a money transfer system. So the world mostly uses the SWIFT transfer system, which is based on the U.S. dollar, and they're developing their own. And then they're also developing their own currency. Well, anyways, in this Bloomberg article, it actually says, which is, I can't believe that it says this, but it does, that it's starting to look like that the people that are in control of the U.S. dollar, so the Fed and the Treasury, are purposely allowing this to happen so that it causes the dollar to lose value. Now, I know that's not a shock that it would be happening, but it's a shock to me that they're actually starting to admit this now, which is what we've said all along. They're wanting this digital currency, and I know that there's politicians and there's bills that's been trying to pass through Congress to make it unlawful. But what's going to happen when the U.S. dollar loses its value, when the world rejects it? Well, it's either stick to your guns and have a dollar that's worthless, or here's a digital currency that's based on something different, right? And it will be accepted. It's based on this global digital currency. And so I think that they're wanting, and that's why we're going into ridiculous amounts of debt. They know that this is a horrible plan. They know that it's going to end in destruction. They know that we can't pay it back. They're trying to milk everything out of the system so that them and all their big corporate buddies and bank buddies can get every little bit of, wealth that they can out of us just before they crash everything. And all of that is connected to World War III. So is the election. I mean, it's very possible. I'm not saying it is going to happen. It's very possible that we will see this kick off before the election. I've said it a few times. Anthony Blinken the other day, and I keep saying this. I know I'm repeating myself, but I'm repeating myself because I think that this is important. If you learn how these people talk, what they say, how they twist and they bend things, he flat out said, well, Joe Biden doesn't want to start World War III. He doesn't, it's not his desire is to start World War III. He didn't say that it wasn't going to happen or they weren't going to start it. He doesn't want to do that. And so we've got all of these, we've got Europe, NATO, and NATO countries. They're ahead of us. They're very much getting ready for World War III. Like, they're getting ready for World War III happening in the next weeks or months. We're not talking like years down the road. And if you listen to a lot of the pundits here in the United States, even the ones that would admit that a World War III scenario is possible in the future, it's not near future. They're talking like, 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. But if you look at what Europe is doing, it looks like they're preparing for something over the next few weeks or few months at most. NATO's announced that they have 300,000 troops ready to go on the border with Russia, and that they have established supply lines and stuff from the Atlantic coastlines into the Russian border with Europe. In other words, that when we send stuff over, they've created clear corridors so that supplies and troops and stuff can be sent in. And Russia said that they're going to start selling weapons to the United States enemies. And that's very possible. I'm not saying it is because I don't know this, but that's very possible what Russia is doing in Cuba. Maybe they're dropping off some missile systems into Cuba. And they're also going to Venezuela and maybe somewhere else. I don't know. These things that are happening, these aren't just coincidences. They don't just happen. For those of us, you, myself, that are old enough to remember Cold War era existence, the world, how the world it was, even during the peak of Cold War and all the things going on, these kind of things weren't happening. This is a big, big deal. All of this stuff that we're seeing play out. Russia says that they have solid intel that France is planning on sending troops soon, like not when World War III happens, but like in the next few weeks, sending troops inside of Ukraine to fight for Ukraine. And if you listen to France, Macron and stuff, that's exactly what they're kind of talking about, the necessity to directly help Ukraine. The world is getting ready for war. And I've said before, and when haven't even mentioned the stuff that's going on with China and Taiwan, or North and South Korea, or the amount of people that's come across the border, the military-aged males. Like I said a week or so ago, just since Joe Biden's been president, if you add up all the military-aged males that's come across the U.S. border illegally, it's about 6 times the entire total troop count of the United States military. So if you took all the United States military combined, about 6 times that, of military-aged males have crossed our border illegally. And that's what we know of. Those are based on official numbers. And all of this is happening with the possibility of a new pandemic that's getting ready to rise. There's been all kinds of, this week alone, almost every day this week alone, there have been several dairy farms that they have popped positive for the new bird flu. And I said the other day that they had found the bird flu in San Francisco's wastewater system. Well, yesterday or today they announced in Austin, Texas, they also found it in wastewater systems. Now, I'm on your side on this. I think that most of that's probably all bunk. But it doesn't mean it's not going to be used against us. There's already people online, the far left, the mask wearers, the ones that are still wearing masks. They're calling for lockdowns already. There's already people online calling to say that let's get this, stop this before it spreads. Let's stop this before it spreads and go ahead and implement lockdowns. And here's the thing. Most of those people wouldn't admit this, but they don't want a fair election. You know, they want Joe Biden to be in office. So they're going to push for lockdowns because they figure, hey, it's a good excuse, this potential pandemic, and it could also play in Joe Biden's favor with the election. So let's do a forced lockdown again. All of these things and several more are all happening at the same time. It's not going to be good. World War III, I think, is going to look way different than any war that we've ever seen before, or history's ever seen. Was it Albert Einstein? I believe it was Albert Einstein said, I don't know how World War III will be fought, but World War IV will be fought with like sticks and stones and horses and something like that. Meaning that very likely World War III will knock us back to the Stone Age. Now, I'm not saying that's exactly what I feel or think, but I'm telling you folks, it's gonna be a mess. It's going to be a mess. It's also fitting really well with the Masonic plans, things that were planned out back in the late 1800s. I'm not going to go into that. Some of you know what I'm talking about. Others, you're like, what is he talking about? Look, you'll have to do your own research. That's a whole long video on that. I have talked about it in the past. It's following the plan perfectly. We're definitely in that stage of wars and rumors of wars. There's hardly a continent right now that there's not some possible tense war or real war or almost war going on. It's all over, every corner of the world. And we've got Americans that are, they're clueless. They're going about their lives. They're worried about how to pay for their groceries or keep their lights on or pay their rent. And that's realistic things. I get it. That affects us every day. But we cannot forget what is happening. And we may not be able to prepare for all of it. You know, you can't, none of us, none of you, myself, none of you are going to be 100% completely prepared for everything that's getting ready to happen. But we do our best to get that physical preparedness, you know, whether it's our body or our stuff, our stockpiles, all that kind of thing. And then we just brace ourselves. We just brace ourselves. You know, it's like a soldier getting ready for war. The more he trains, it's not necessarily a guarantee that he will come home safe. It's just getting him more and more prepared so that when combat finds him, that he will be more ready for it. It won't be such a shock that he could still take a bullet, still come home in a box, but it increases his odds. And that's really how we ought to look at it, because in the end, this World War III and all this stuff, it's really a war against us. That's what it is. It's a war against the people. Whether or not it's all staged, whether or not it's all pre-planned, that Biden and Putin and Xi are all on the phone like, hey, you know, what do we do next? Well, we got to make it look like that we hate you and you hate us. Or it really is that. It doesn't matter. In the end, you and I, the average person, the average Russian, the average Ukrainian, the average Israeli, the average Chinese, you and I, us, this regular people, we're the ones that's going to suffer the most from this. And we're not going to have this safety net. Government's not going to come in and take care of us. I mean, they'll say that, but it'll come at a great, great cost. And so for us to be able to survive the things that are happening and what's coming, we need to be ready for it. It's plain and simple. It's got, in my mind, it has got to be one of the most simplest concepts, and yet most people just don't get it. I don't think it's so much they don't get it. They just hope. They have this hopium, that it's not going to be that bad, or that there's going to be, government's going to take care of us. If it's really that bad, we'll go get some free stimulus money, and we'll get some free food, and they'll pay for our cell phone bill, and they'll pay for our mortgage, and everything will be okay. Even if that happens, it's going to come at a great cost. So you need to be getting ready to be self-sufficient, to be able to take care of your own and those around you. Because I don't want to sound like a doom and gloomer. I really actually despise that. I know that it would be shocking for some of you to hear that. These guys that get on here on YouTube and they're constantly, oh my goodness, the sky is falling. Today, 10 trillion people, their power went out, and it was almost like an EMP. And nuclear weapons were this close to being detonated. I can't stand that. But we have to recognize what's actually going on, and it's bad. And we need to get ready for it. And I want people to get ready for it so that they're not shocked. They're not terrified. They're not panicked. And then they're not running to the wrong thing for help. Get your houses in order, folks. It's serious. I hope and pray that we have months and years before this happens. But it's looking like it's heating up really fast. You need to be getting your houses in order quickly. Prepping mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.